What's up, guys? This is Wednesday in 5th period, and we're going to look at an example of something with one of our platformer games, but this applies to any of the other games you might do. And the thing I'm talking about is adding a single feature without really changing the rest. So I've had some people turn in versions of their work that were pretty much just the same as our templates, the same as our examples, and that's fine. Obviously they work, but I want you guys to add something of your own. You don't want to just change the color and that's it, although changing the color is fine. And when you do that, if you add a feature, for example, on your platformer, if we wanted to add an enemy, or we wanted to add a wall, or we wanted to add a new type of block you can stand on, which is what we're going to do today. I'm going to add a little spring, a little trampoline thing that will bounce you when you get on it. That should be in its own little world, and you add that code in a class or in a function, and then all you have to do is tell the other ones to check it. But you don't have to rearrange the whole code and make 5 different adjustments in 5 different places if you set it up correctly. And so I want to show some examples of that. Let's see. I already got this up because I didn't want to have to wait for the loading at the beginning. But I'm going to stretch out the preview window, and I recommend you guys do this, especially on your Chromebooks. I'm going to take off this part. Move this down a little, although of course in this console you need it for error messages sometimes. Let's see, I think for this one I made this 600 by 400. I don't know why. You can choose whatever ratio you want as long as it fits on the screen. Now I'm going to shrink my webcam thing to... Okay, so if you remember, this is the last version we did on our platformer, where you've got your guy able to die. And I used this in the video talking about spawning and despawning. I'm going to continue with that, by the way. I mentioned that I was going to do a more complicated version. We'll post that on Friday probably. But in this one, you've got a guy who can fall in a hole and get respawned at the beginning. You can also jump off the edge, and then boom. It waits half a second, it brings you in the air, and then you get to see it fall, just to give a little animation without actually writing a code for our animation. If you make him start in the air, then our gravity takes over. We wrote the gravity function at the very beginning, and it's only like 3 lines. So using that as an extra thing will give us a sort of visual cue. Like if you see our guy start in the air, he falls, that brings your eye to that area. That lets you know, hey, something's happening. Don't be alarmed that your guy transported to the new spot. That's because he's dead. And we also added in a few tiny things like a pause of half a second and so on. Later we can add an animation, a little doo-doo-doo sparkle or something to show that it's a new life. Anyway, let's say in this little spot, since we've already got a little dead spot here, let's add a new block. We'll call it a spring, although of course it won't look like a spring. In 4th quarter, once we get all the mechanics working, we'll add the visuals, and you'll make your guy look like something, and you'll make the bottom look like grass, and the background look like sky, and add in images and things like that. And so we can make our spring actually look like a spring, like the ones in Sonic the Hedgehog, or the ones in Celeste, or any of the classic platform, just a little rectangle with a spring under it. When you stand on it, it goes boing. We don't need that stuff yet. Let's get a class for the spring. And what I'm going to do is have it be the same as the platform with a few changes. So it's going to be something you can land on. It's going to be something that involves a rectangle. It's going to be something that stops you from falling, and just has all that same stuff. Like all that, we don't want to type this again, and we don't want to copy it. Is having yourself copy a big chunk of code and then use it again is, I mean, it'll work, but it's always a sign that like there must be a better way, right? There must be a more efficient way. And what we're going to do is we're going to say class spring, and then in parentheses, which you usually don't do, right? If you saw class platform, it doesn't have anything after it. But if you say class spring platform, then it is called a subclass of platform. It inherits all the stuff. Okay, you might think of it as like the child of platform, and it inherits all the DNA. If I put nothing in here, pass means this is blank, just move on, then it gets all this stuff. Okay, sometimes I might want to add more functions. Other times I might want to fiddle with the ones we have, like change one thing about it, which is in fact what I'm going to do here. I'm going to change the show function, because the show function is what draws it, and we want to draw this in a different color. We don't want it to look exactly the same as our white floor or white platform. Later this will involve stuff like, you know, putting an image file, but we're set up, right? And in fact, we don't even need the show and hide as separate things, because right now the platforms don't move, they don't change. We could just show them and keep them there forever. But this is setting us up for the future. If they ever change, if they ever look different, if they ever move, if they ever take damage, whatever, then this is already built in and we can use these. In fact, one of the things we were talking about in class is maybe you have platforms that move, and now that we've got this set up, it'll be useful for that. Anyway, I'm going to take the def show and copy it and then change a little bit. And this will say, hey, the spring gets everything from the platform except this one is going to be a little bit different. And what are we going to call it? What are we going to make? Let's make it blue. I don't know. Blue seems nice. Red always seems like danger. And green, well, later the grass is going to be green, so we don't want that. So you go python.color. I think that's how you do it. And then blue. It's underlined red, but I think it's going to change. Come on. Wait, no, Pygame. I can't type and talk at the same time. Okay, so that means that the class spring gets everything from the platform except this one is overridden with the old show becomes the new show, and it'll be blue instead. Okay, now if I hit run, will anything happen? No, because I haven't told it what to do with the spring, so I have to make one and then make it happen, you know, make it inherit that stuff. So over here where we did this, by the way, this is ugly, we should rewrite, but you know, let's call this spring 1. And of course later we should change these names. We should make them more informative, like instead of platform 1 it could be like bottom left platform, or platform that holds the key, or platform, you know, like actually show what they mean. But we never use the names anyway. Once we put them in a list, we just run the list. So spring 1 is going to be using the same initialization as the platform. Where does it start? It starts at 200x, because that's where this one ends. And what's the y? The y is the screen height minus 20. And then the way they do rectangles is you do the top left, and then you do how much it goes over, how much it goes down. So how much does it go over? It goes over 50, because if you notice the difference between the end of this one and the beginning of this one is 50. And then it goes down 20. Actually, let's bump it up a little so that it's like raised a tiny bit over the ground. Let's say 25. Now, if I do that and hit run, still nothing would happen, because I gotta tell the screen to draw it. Okay, this thing would exist. The object would exist in code world, and things would notice that they're getting hit, but it wouldn't show up on the screen. So I could put this on the screen, but just like over here when we made the show and hide, even though we don't need them, it sets us up for the future. I'm going to do one thing here that sets us up for the future, which is to make a list. There's a weird sound in the room. If the people here with me can hear it, it's because the people in various classrooms that have the old boards are getting new boards, and so there are people like drilling into the walls and stuff. Spring list is going to have spring 1. Okay, I don't need to do that because I can just use spring 1 on its own, but theoretically we'll have more in the future, and we want to be able to say, hey, are you hitting any of the springs? If so, bounce. And you don't have to check them all one by one. You don't even have to know how many there are. You just ask the list, okay? And I could do the append like I did here because that was just showing the append function, but you can also put them in the brackets right away. That's why lists are so easy, even though other forms would work for this. So I'm going to take this thing and says, hey, every time we take a frame, we're going to check if we need to update any platforms. And let's do the same for spring. Again, we're not updating the platforms. We're drawing them once, and they don't actually move, but maybe they could. Now, if we hit run, unless I forgot something, it will show up. It will show up. There you go. It's blue. It's on there. And we should be able to just fall through it because it's drawing and we're checking like every frame to see if it needs to be redrawn or something. But we're not actually doing anything. The guy doesn't stop because the gravity of the guy doesn't check for springs. It was only checking for platforms. Yeah, we still fall through and die. So let's add that. Okay, so remember, it's the guy. The platform itself doesn't tell the guy to stop, okay? There's nothing inside the platform code about, oh, hey, if you land on me, you're going to stop, and we're going to hold you up, and we're going to let you jump. That code is in the guy, because we don't want the platform to have to know what's going on with other objects. Okay, the platform is just doing its thing. It'll answer the question if you ask, hey, are we colliding with you? But it won't tell you what to do. It won't say like, hey, you're free to jump now. You're going to do your thing. We put that code in the guy because it's nice to have your stuff in nice little isolated, separated functions that, of course, interact, but in a controlled way. So we've got our guy, and he has multiple functions, and they're all nice and small. Are you walking? Are you jumping? Each one of those is very small. And the bounce on the spring is going to be similar. So we're going to make one. Let's just make it at the bottom. Yeah, let's make it around here. And we're going to call it bounce. Okay. And we're going to say, okay, if you land on a spring, you do something. If not, don't worry about it. So I'm going to take, let's copy this one just to make a little less typing. We're going to say for anything in the spring list, if we collide, this is fine, then we're going to take our velocity and switch it. So however fast we were going down, now we're going to go up. Because with a spring, if you land on it a little bit, you bounce a little bit, but if you land on it from way up and you're going super fast, then you should bounce way up instead of just a constant like, oh, you get X velocity. You get, in terms of a bounce, you need it to be based on whatever it was bringing to the table, you know? So we're going to say self Vy equals negative self Vy. And then we have to tell that to happen in the update function. Remember, in our main loop where all this stuff happens, this is the only stuff that ever runs is right here. So if these don't tell the other guys to run, then they won't. So if we have a bounce function, it'll never actually happen unless somebody else invokes it. So inside the update, we probably want to mention that. So let's mention that. And it may matter what the order is, but I'm just putting it near the end because I put the definition near the end. So let's hit run and see what that does. So we got our guy, let's walk off. Oh, we bounce. And then we, like a pendulum, we slowed down. Each bounce was a little bit less because on your way up, you're taking the velocity you had, but gravity's pulling against you, and you're bouncing a little bit less each time. If you noticed, our guy fell through eventually. So you get some nice big bounces, and they slow just like it would in real life. Maybe not just like it would, but you see that? It eventually falls through because it has this thing where like the bottom is 1 pixel lower than it should be, and then it says, oh, I guess we're not bouncing, and I guess we're not getting held up because this is not counted as a platform, so we're just falling, even though we start falling very slow because we're going from 0. We already have a function for that, which is called snap, and we made this because when we were jumping onto platforms and jumping onto the ground, sometimes we would move a little too far down and move like into the platform, make a dent because it was moving too many pixels before it would check every frame if your speed is above a certain amount. That happens. And I was talking about maybe adding a maximum speed, but you know, we'll do that separately. Let's say in the snap function, let's add another little guy for the spring. I hate doing this. I hate the copy paste. We'll make a more beautiful, efficient version very soon, but let's use this just to get started. So now it says for anybody in the platform, if you went into it just a little bit, then you get snapped to the top of it. You say, hey, pop out of that. This isn't supposed to overlap. These things are supposed to be solid. So now we'll run it and see if it prevents that issue. Yeah, just like it did with the platforms, we knew that was going to work because we have tested it many times. I've hit run probably 100 times on this program. Just run, jump, testing, testing, testing to make sure. I'm not saying it's like ready to publish as a AAA title or something, but it's something that I know that part works, okay? Now, what if you just walk on the spring? If you jump on it, you get a nice bounce, but if you just walk, it should probably give you a little bump, right? If you're Sonic the Hedgehog and you walk on a spring, they usually prevent that by making it like in a little indentation in the ground, so you never walk straight. You always like fall onto it or something. You should get a little boost, right? Maybe less than a jump. And by the way, I can't jump on this because of the jump thing tests whether you're on solid ground. So maybe I should add that too. But let's make it give you a little something even if you just walk to the spring. Because like if you walk on a trampoline, your step gives a little bounce even though you haven't, you know, landed from a great height or something. So let's say if self.vy equals 0, then self.vy equals -10, which is less than a jump. So this will just give you a little, well, okay. If you jump from above, you get this big thing, but if you walk, you get boop, 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 boop. Okay, boop, 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 boop. That looks reasonable. That looks like something that a physicist would not recoil at. So, great. The point of this was to show that you can add a feature without too much. How did we do? We added one function that had 4 lines, and then we copied another little bit of 3, and then we added one here, and then we added another function that had 4, and then and then so I believe that is 15 lines total. Not too bad, not too crazy. It wasn't like a massive effort, and it also wasn't ruining all the other stuff. Like, I did not change 90% of the functions in here because they're supposed to be modular. They're supposed to be in their own little world doing their thing. I didn't change the platform at all. I didn't change any function of the guy except for the snap. And we'll find a way to make this more elegant. You know, it's really ugly to have the same code copied like that. You want to be able to say, like, hey, check this list and this other list at the same time. We can make it, we can make like one super list that contains all the items that it would need. And that would just be one line. And then we'd edit this line. And so that would make it, you know, a little less going on. So really the biggest thing we added was this, which is not that bad at all. So you take a look at something like that in your program. You can make a new item. You can make the items that were there a little bit different. You can make the items that have a rule, change the rule a little bit. Like if you make your guy jump way higher, that'll change everything. Like my guy gets, I think if I remember right, it was 17 as your velocity. If you make that 30, well then he'll go flying, and it's a whole new game now. So small changes can make a big difference, and you want stuff like that to make yours unique. Let's see, we got like 3 minutes before lunch. Let's see if we can do that moving platform thing super quick. Platform, update. What if you just move the Y? Is this going to work? I haven't thought about it at all. Let's give it a shot. Theoretically, all the platforms should move up a tiny bit. Oh. Well. They move down because I always forget that negative means up. But they also didn't hide the other one correctly. And what I just see now is that I typed this wrong, having never needed it, but I probably copy-pasted these guys and didn't change it. So, okay, now it should be, hey, look at that. It is doing exactly what I wanted, where the platforms move up, except the ground was included in that. So if we make that apply to just one of these guys, then that platform will be an elevator. And all we had to do was add one line with like 10 characters. So we can make separate lists of different types. Making the ground count as a platform was very easy because we wanted to have it all the same rules. But we could do this thing and make it a subclass and make the ground with platform with like a slightly different element on one part. And there you don't have to type everything again. You just give the rule to certain subtypes and not others. And then, boom, we have an elevator with a couple other things we'd have to change. Like, what do you do when it gets to the edge? You probably make it respawn at the bottom and cycle through, or turn around and go back down. But those are like one line each. It's nothing bad at all. So maybe I'll do that in class. I'll show you that other video on Friday, and we'll all make some progress. The other thing I'm going to do on Friday is, and this is important, and even though nobody's going to see the end of this video because people always end it early, I'm going to go through the grades and try to make it so that I'm leaving nothing blank. There are a lot of grades that I've left blank because I'm like, oh, I'm going to give them a chance to keep going, but I don't want to do that all the way to the end, so I'm going to put in a grade of what you got, or 0 if you got nothing, so that we can still change it. I'm not saying it's locked in, but I don't want to do that at the end. So that's another thing. I'm going to end this now, and my guys in the room are going to go to lunch when the bell rings. All right, so we had